The Red Dress Confidential. Copyright Richard Hendry, 2022. Narrated by Richard Hendry. Chapter 1. Tara took a solid look right at me before she did it. Her cool green eyes had that glimmer of madness in them that I had become used to over these endless days. I was standing right there, next to her on the balcony. She had to say something to pull me away from my death glare down the 6 floors to the street. A street that was filled with police cars, mobile crime unit SUVs, personnel from both FBI and Interpol, and an assortment of angry security guards, head waiters, and union leaders. Somewhere in the crowd was a small but formidable group of evangelicals, but their whereabouts were unknown to me at this time. And that's when she did it. She ran to the corner of the balcony and screamed, "Geronimo!" and jumped off the side that was over the canal. Like a slim, sexy, red-headed femme fatale version of Jason Bourne, draped in a red Versace and sporting 7-inch Prada fuck-me pumps, leaving me there, with no possible way of defending myself or explaining why most of this was not my fault. I had just a few minutes before they made their way up, and in that time I could either fix a G&T and relax, or call a team of Philadelphia lawyers, or take the third and most insane option ever, and follow her over the edge. I mean, I had been doing that figuratively for a week now, but this would be in a very literal sense. My only hope was the elevator was so small that they would have to take the stairs, which gave me a little time to do 2 of the 3. I quickly made my way to the minibar, pulled a can of some cheap gin and tonic premix shit, and poured it over ice. I did my best to try and enjoy it, but once you've had good gin, you're kind of fucked for anything else. Not that gin or its quality was the most pressing issue, but in truth, once you start letting your standards slip, even in conditions of extreme stress, it's the road to hell. Next thing you know, you're outside Taco Bell, eyeing that value menu with bad intent at 3 a.m., aka 4th meal. Looking at those inexplicable rolled things on that grill at the 7-Eleven as a real food choice when you're paying for gas. Having a conversation with yourself that questions your avoidance of Walmart and includes massive justifications about the non-fair trade clothing. It's not a road you want to go down. Anyhow, that was my feeling on it, and just what I was thinking before I made another in a long and varied list of insane decisions. Why? Because I had gone fucking mad in the past few days, that's why. And then, as the door was doing its best to repel the multinational lynch mob, I was still finishing my basement gin as I fell down towards the dark and murky waters of the Venice Canal. If I'd had a few more minutes, I could have written a sign and held it up as I fell. Like an homage to the Roadrunner cartoons, it simply said, "Help." Chapter 2. 7 days earlier. I was sitting in my favorite chair at home, looking into the abyss of my monitor as the analog clock on the wall made its ticking sound, a sound that in the dead silence of writer's block sounds like a .50 caliber machine gun mounted on any of the Rambo flicks Jeeps. I can't tell you how long I'd been there, but it could have been a few days. I had on a torn shirt, a pair of boxers that I was afraid to take off because I was sure they would run away. Sometime over the past week or months, I had fallen into a dark void, a bleak and hopeless place where all writers go at least once in their lives. A forbidden land where no good or sound plot or storyline can or will grow. Think of it as Vegas for the creative part of your brain. And to be clear, I chose it. You see, when you have dead air in your fingers and static-filled mind, you'll do anything to distract yourself from the big empty of your brain. And in my case, that distraction was poorly made UFO documentaries on Amazon Prime. It's only slightly less debaucherous than Vegas. Slightly. This had lasted quite a while. Right up until the time I decided that it might be time to start smoking again. I grabbed an overshirt with faded flamingos on it and my wallet and headed out into the blazing Florida sun. Unknown to most people, Florida has drive-through everything. It's the only state where you can get booze, smokes, a toilet seat, and an abortion without ever leaving the safety and the AC of your huge diesel SUV. You can get lottery tickets, hollow point bullets, and a mail-order bride pushed right through your window. A 6-pack of hamsters, a roll of duct tape, and a bootleg copy of American Gigolo with Arabic subtitles and a box of red wine, all at the same store. You drive everywhere here. Through supermarkets, department stores, schools, They even have a drive-in crematorium for you in your car. In by 9, dust by 9:15. Florida's not hell. It's where they send you when you're overqualified for hell. When Satan is like, nah, not him. Not here. On more than one occasion, I had come to think that I might have died and for my sins been deposited here in the flaccid and flabby dick of the country to rot and burn. Flambeing forever in front of a circa 1990s desktop when not being able to fill a page with anything that had the slightest resemblance to interesting text. And so armed with a half set of proper clothing on my unwashed body and a wallet filled with credit cards that were at 95% of their weak-ass limits, I headed outside. I was sitting 3 cars back at a place called the Farm Store, which frequently had no dairy products in stock, when the gunshot went off, shattering my left window as she got in the car, looking fabulous. She had killed the store clerk with a single shot. As the dead store clerk fell towards my door, I could see the .45 with a silencer attached that she had in her cold, dead left hand. The woman that got in the car was dressed in a red strapless dress, heels, had perfect red hair and cool green eyes. She carried her own 9mm. A small amount of smoke was drifting out of the tip, like a cigarette in a movie. I was fixated on it. I could smell the gunpowder, or I thought I could. In truth, I had never been around a gun shop before, so for all I knew, it was the smell coming from the Jeep in front of me. The woman's voice broke me out of my trance. "Drive, Duke. We've got to go," she snapped at me, and I hit the gas out of instinct. I took a hard ride out of the farm store onto wet blacktop. The ass of my late model Geo Jeep thingy slipped out a little, but got right a few feet. I headed north past the local mall. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew we should not be where we were. The woman in my right seat was familiar to me, in a way that I could not quite put my finger on. Other than the flaming red dress, there was nothing about her that I recognized. The dress looked a little like that thing that Jessica Rabbit wore, but thankfully for what was left of my shattered mind, she was not a cartoon. Although had she been, I wouldn't have been too surprised. She had, however, just saved my life, or so it seemed. A life that I was very fond of, but it was also a life that I was completely sure was not in need of saving. I had done nothing on a level that might foster this kind of violent attack. I was a hack writer, a guy that wrote fiction of a nature that was only enjoyed by childish men and reclusive women of a tender age. In short, I was a soft porn author. If I was a magazine, I would not be Hustler or even Penthouse. I'd be a combination of that Racy Sports Illustrated cover or the inside pages of Maxim, with the kind of prose that might appeal to middle-aged women who had not had a date in a decade. How I could have driven anyone to hire a hitman or woman that would take cover at a local drive-thru convenience store and wait for my arrival is a full-blown mystery. If anything, I was much more likely to be kidnapped by a sledgehammer-swinging Kathy Bates type and forced to do unspeakable things in her cabin in the woods. As we took a few more turns, I had a question or two. "Who the hell are you and what's going on?" I asked my mystery guest. She smiled a wicked little smile and leaned over to me, her face so close to my neck I could feel her breath dancing on my skin. "You know who I am," she hissed in my ear. "No, I have no clue," I said out of reflex, but somewhere deep down in the lower chambers of my mind she was familiar. Not as a person, but the shadow of one. One that you could make out to be anyone from your memory, akin to playing the cloud game. From the moment she got in, I had felt that. I did not want to have to explain that, so I put it another way. "I'm sorry, but I really have no idea who you are." She withdrew back to the right side of the car and just stared at me, as if she was trying to read my mind. Or perhaps she didn't believe me. I even had thought that maybe she had realized she made a mistake, or mistaken me for someone else. All of that changed with her next statement. "Okay, Duke, I'm Tara, and you know that. Now, we're not going to play this game. We have a real problem here. I just stopped you from having another hole in that huge head of yours. It should be obvious to you that your cover is blown now. So let's grab your bug-out bag and, bug the fuck out." If I had woken up on Mars, I could not have been more shocked. I heard of this kind of thing before, a small and very unique type of obsession a small percentage of the population can create about a person of some note. Clearly, this woman was one of those. And I realized that she was an updated version of the aforementioned Kathy Bates model. A sort of 2020 version of Kathy Bates. But like everything else these days, hyperbolic. Calling herself Tara was all I needed. Tara Gray was the name of a character in a series of books I had written a few years back. She was a deep cover operative for a fictional government agency I called The Hive. They worked on keeping knowledge of highly classified technology from the general public and from the enemies of the state, when they were not having ill-advised sex in the most outrageous places. The so-called plots of these stories were a mad-lib mix-and-match effort, transparent villains, simple end-of-the-world plans, and endless amounts of double entendre text leading to the sex. I had written Tara Gray's character with the male sensibility towards sex and a host of other painful and regrettable cliches. She was an expert on everything. All weapons, fighting arts, and she was a female MacGyver that could disarm a nuclear bomb with one of those plastic eye-shaped things that they stick through cheap clothing to hold a price tag on. She was also gifted with the #1 secret agent trait. She had no conscience that she was aware of. The lovable, smart, beautiful, one-dimensional sociopath. The character she had called me, Duke, was for her former handler, a mentor of sorts that I had wrote in as a person she would refer to. He was never an active character in any of the stories. In fact, I never even gave him a last fucking name. As far as the rest of it, my so-called cover, it must have been something she pulled out of the mess of crazy stories. The problem was she had just killed a person, and that person was going to kill one of us. Indifferent to the fact that she was a madwoman, there was something else going on here, and I needed to know about it. All in all, I thought it would be best to play along for a few minutes until I got my bearings. "Turn right here and head for the executive hangar on the north side of the Melbourne airport," she ordered, and I did just what I was told. We got close to the runway on the north side of the airpark. I saw a long, strange plane with its lights on and clearly running, sitting there behind a small plane hangar. "There it is," she said, all wet and ready. She was starting to use that book talk that I was guilty of writing. "Well, that's great. I guess this is where we part ways," I said to her as she got out. She stopped and leaned back into me. "You're coming too. I have no chance of figuring this out without you, and I'm going to keep you alive if it kills you." She finished, shooting me a look that seemed like she meant business. "Look," I started, "there's nothing wrong here. I've done nothing wrong. All of this will look like is that a woman shot another woman and got in my car with a gun. I can play it off. And whatever else you're going through, I feel bad for you. But I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm not getting on a plane with you. Sorry." Her face changed slightly, as if it was sinking in that I was resolved. "Okay," she said, pulling out some lipstick. "Hey, do you remember this?" she asked, as she took the top off the lipstick, placed it between her cleavage. Then she dropped her head down and moved it around quickly, and when she popped back up, her lips were perfect. She was doing a Molly Ringwald from the Breakfast Club. "That's quite a skill you've got there," I had to admit. She smiled, then pulled out a spray bottle of perfume. She looked at me. "Last chance to come along willingly," she said again. I shook my head no. She sprayed the bottle at me. It filled my mouth and eyes and nose. "What the fuck?" was all I got out. And then I could feel my hands fall from the wheel. As my eyes were losing focus, I saw 2 men come from the plane, and a second later, I was falling out of the left door, and then I kept falling into a deep black. Chapter 3. The dream was perfect. I was sitting on a cool beach, somewhere that looked like a screensaver. Someplace with a few eyes in its name. Like Fiji, maybe. The beach was a small sandbar that might have been man-made, and above me was a large deck that housed a pool and a 3-story house like a movie star might rent to get away from it all. The water was crystal clear. The wind was cool, and she was there. Dressed in a one-piece red bathing suit that had so many parts missing that it hardly left anything to the imagination. "Do you want another gin and tonic?" she asked from behind a pair of white Wayfarers. Yes, I do," I said. Then she just handed me one. It was cold and perfect. I sipped it and it danced on my tongue and induced a feeling that could only be attributed to some kind of designer DNA drug made just for me. I smiled. What else could I do? She was out of her chair now and sitting on top of me. her long legs straddling either side of the chair. I looked up at her. She was looking down at me. "Do you think you'll be any use for us?" she asked me in a strange tone, almost like a man's voice. "What are you talking about?" I asked. Her face changed. She looked mad. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" "He trained me," she said. And then the sand started to move. At first it was vibrating, like a bed at a cheap motel. Then the wind picked up and was almost like a hurricane. The beach and the sand and the cool sun were fading. I was coming back to life, and I was horrified to open my eyes. The howling sound was so loud that it could be anything, a bear or a dragon. I was so fucking confused. A sudden shift happened, causing my whole body to fly to the right, and then I was falling. That's when I opened my eyes. I was on the floor of the jet. The sound was the passenger door wide open, and the plane was in a nosedive. I clung to the floor for dear life. A second later, I saw her, making her way towards the door. She closed it and came to my side. "You okay?" she asked, in a caring tone that was kind of off-putting. "What the fuck is happening?" I yelled as I struggled to get my body back into the seat. "Well," she said in a calm voice that did not seem to match our situation, "you missed a lot. I drugged you because you were being a bitch. Then these assholes were acting like I shouldn't have brought you and you would be no use. Then he attacked me, and in the struggle I opened the door and chucked him out, along with the pilot. Turns out they were both working for the other side. Anyhow, everything's okay now." "But was it? There was no pilot. The plane was in a nosedive. I had been abducted by a crazy person, so all in, no, I'd say that it was not okay." "What the fuck are you talking about? How is this okay?" I screamed at her. She laughed and walked towards the cockpit. Over her shoulder, she said, 1,200 hours in the left seat, Duke, or did you forget?" And I had. Mainly because it was something I had written in to fix a corner I had written myself into in book 2. And not to put too fine a point on it, but she was not really Tara, cause there was no real Tara. "You're not real," I yelled at her as she closed the cockpit door. "Tell me about it, right? I'm like a superhero, but much hotter." And that was when I realized I wasn't wearing the clothes that I had on back in Florida. Not that they would be missed, but what the fuck? I stood up and looked in one of the mirrors that lined the inside of the interior walls. It was a suit, and not just a suit. In fact, it was a suit that Tom Ford would have designed and then instantly came. The thing was perfect. "Hey," I yelled at her, "where'd this suit come from?" But she was already in the cockpit. I took off the coat to see the label, but there was none. It was custom made, and it fit me better than my own skin. This was just another in a long line of shit that made no sense. The suit was tailored to my body. Just how long had she been planning this? I needed to know more, but some part of me did not want this to be over too soon. I sat there as the plane leveled off and climbed to what I guessed was cruising altitude. Tara came out of the cockpit holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses with a single fresh strawberry in each one. "How about a toast to us?" she said in a sexy tone. "How about you tell me where the hell we're going?" I asked as I took a glass from her. "Going?" she chuckled. "Hell, we're almost there. We'll be landing at a private runway operated by the people that own the Khan heliports just northwest of Istanbul," she said, like she was telling me that we were going to the Gap at the local fucking mall. "Turkey? We're going to Turkey? Are you out of your fucking mind? We're Americans, for Christ's sakes. We are the most hated people in the world, and this is the center of that hate world." I was just a little pissed off, but trying to hide it. Tara was indifferent to my rant. "Relax. We have friends here." And that was when I started to wonder a few other things. Like my mind had been chasing me for an hour, but now it was here, and it had some shit it needed to know. How could we be here this fast? Which was not really at the top of the list, but it was at least a decent question. "Oh yeah, you were out cold when we got on the plane. We are on one of those Ariane supersonic jets. You should know that. You made the deal for the prototypes in exchange for the inside track for federal funding." And again, it was simple, yet absurd line from book 3, but she was right. "Yeah, okay, but why in the fucking world would we come to Istanbul?" Tara gave me a look that said she thought I was an idiot. Hilda, of course, silly." "Who the hell is Hilda?" She gave me that look again, then she walked over and sat too close to me and put her hand on my head. Are you okay? Did the drug give you brain damage? Or was it living in that burning suburban hell undercover for years? Hilda, the bitch that tried to kill you. She really did look like she was worried about me, and she should have been. I was not only lost, I was the wrong guy. And, I said, and she's a former Turkish secret police, so we're here to see Akim for information on who might have hired her, even though we really already know, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious. She stopped, seeming to be waiting for me to offer up that obvious answer, but I had no clue. In fact, I was getting more and more confused by the minute. She was flowing like an urban poet, using some small details from odd corners of the books and then freestyling the rest without missing a beat, like all of this was well rehearsed. Or, maybe even stranger, it was all true? Either way, I gave it a wild guess. OMD, I offered. Bingo, baby, you're on a roll. For a minute I was thinking that maybe you were too fucked up to function. Yet, the amazing thing was that even though I got it right, it was all wrong. First of all, the acronym OMD, which stood for Octagon Militia of Destabilization, I was drunk off my ass and trying to make up some semi-evil group with the letters of the band Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark because I thought it would be fucking funny. And I even deleted that from the book before sending it to the publisher, which only meant one of three things. One, she had the means to access my computer and had been watching me for 3 years. Or two, I was the most incredibly accurate clairvoyant in history. Or three, oh shit, I forgot what three was. Wait, three, this was, despite the unbelievable textures, scents, and sounds, some kind of dream or hallucination, a deep psychotic break that has facilitated the kind of world-building delusion that would end up with me in a padded cell talking to a non-existent hot girl for the rest of my life. For all I knew, I was already there, bouncing off the walls, eating my toenails, babbling about deadlines, fast planes, clandestine organizations. The plane started to drop and shake a little. Hey, do you think that maybe you should be up in the cockpit? I snapped at her. She was indifferent. I'll get up there, but the plane has that auto land system from Garmin Aviation, so it does it all itself. She had just finished that statement when the plane started to scream at us from the front. We both ran forward to see what was happening, even though I would be about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. The only thing I could do was scream in fear if she was too shocked to do that. When we got up there, it was not pretty. I did not scream, even though I should have. We were heading for a small strip of land that was in between two housing projects that could not possibly have the landing area needed for a safe landing. The strip, as it were, looked more like a driveway, and sitting right in the middle of it was two helicopters. We figured out in short order that this was the Khan helipad and not the private plane strip they also ran. So much for Google Earth's listing accuracy in central Turkey. If we had survived this, I was going to write them a strongly worded email about that. Tara slipped into the seat and dropped the auto-land program. She had us back in the air in a few seconds, yet the absurdly loud alarm was still blasting us. That was when the real and inescapable problem hit us. We were out of fuel, and the readout said we had less than 3 minutes of airtime left, which was a polite way of putting it. What are we going to do? Tara said out loud. What? How would I know? Find the airport. No, she screamed. We have no passports, no authorization, no flight plans, and I'm at least on 9 different international no-fly lists. Which was all true, I guessed, but I could not care. Without this plane, we could not fly on our own. Fuck that, we'll work that out after we survive. Oh yeah? This country doesn't have jails. They have concrete coffins with a view. Did you ever see that Brad Davis movie, Midnight Express, for fuck's sakes? That guy did 30 years for a little hash. We're enemy combatants. We'll end up in a hole that Bane came out of in The Dark Knight Rises. Well, she was right. I had not been thinking clearly, but we still had a problem, and one that could not be solved in the air. Just then she screamed out, "There!" and pointed to a long road only a few miles away. That looks like a park, I yelled, and it was. It was State Road 208 that led to the popular camping area called Turkcell Platinum Park, and they were about to receive new guests. Tara pointed the plane towards the road, and we hoped for a low-traffic day at the park. The plane's wings barely fit in between the tree-lined road, and after a few close calls with rock outcroppings, the plane mercifully came to a stop at the park driveway. No cars in sight. Tara powered up the plane slightly and ran it into the woods just past the driveway, getting it in there enough, save for the tail that was sticking right out at the roadside. It was the best we could do, but it would not last long. We opened the emergency exit door that dropped out of the rear of the plane and walked out like a couple of aliens arriving on Earth for a vacation and some cattle entrails. Amazingly, there was still not a single car on the road. We stood there for a minute, waiting for the sound of sirens or a chase helicopter that would have surely been dispatched in a major city everywhere else in the world when a plane just landed in the city streets in front of a camping park. But there was an eerie quietness about the place. The whole thing seemed impossible, like the opening of a Bond film. All that was missing was the credits. Some shadowy naked girls dancing around and a song by Adele. Only in this movie, Tara was Bond, and I was some airheaded chick that needed saving over and over and over. But all bullshit aside, Tara had saved me twice now. She had only kidnapped me once. It was still a winning average, but it was looking like it might be a long season. And we were out here in the open, just walking along the road we had just landed on, illegally in Turkey, and even though I did look fabulous in my suit, I was so far out of my element that I might as well have been wearing a yellow and red polka-dotted clown costume. Tara seemed fine, like it was just another Tuesday to her. What's the plan here now?" I asked. She smirked. "I'll make a call and we'll get a taxi to the hotel. Then we'll have some sex in one of those huge, crawl-footed, old-world iron bathtubs. And then some uber-expensive lunch on the patio overlooking the river. And then we'll kill someone." She rambled off, like it was a script she had memorized or a to-do list. Like some casual weekly happening. You know, like Tuesday on the Jersey Shore. Gym, tan, laundry. Only this was tub fuck, eat murder. I was only down with one of those. I could eat. A car pulled up a few minutes later, and by a car, I mean a Silver Cloud Rolls Royce, and it took us to the hotel. And when I say hotel, I mean a building on the river that looked like it was about as big as the British Parliament building. And with my luck, there was some Turkish version of Guy Fawkes under it, planting drums of dynamite right now, ranting to himself about the abuse of Islam, wearing a strange mask, rhyming his rants like a mad Ottoman Hugo Weaver, possibly named Ishmael Weaver, a distant cousin. The car stopped at the base of the red-carpeted switchback steps that led into the great building that was now the Kerrigan Plaza Hotel. A man in a ridiculous outfit and tall hat opened the door, and we fell out. "No baggage, my good man," Tara said in a perfect and new English accent, and we made our way to the lobby, which looked like I had stepped out of a combination of a Jane Austen novel and the set of Dangerous Liaisons. All that was missing was powdered wigs and transparent-skinned inbred royals. They even had a harpsichord in the lobby. A man in a suit that made mine look like an off-the-rack warehouse for men rag came running up to Tara and began a well-practiced form of ass-kissing while pushing a set of keys into her hand and begging her to follow him, and a horde of even lower groveling employees to the lift. Once inside, we rode to the top floor, and a short mile walk later, we walked into the Sultan Suite. The horde ran around, opening curtains, pulling back doors, fluffing the 9 different vases of blood-red roses. It was a show for sure. After the cast made their exit stage right, I had a few more questions. What the hell was that all about? "What? Oh, Fazish? He owes me a favor or two," was all she said. "What did you do? Save his entire family from a lava flow? What kind of deep indentured servitude was that?" She laughed. "Clearly you've never been to this part of the world." But I had. Not Istanbul, but I'd been to Dubai. Unless you were actually the fucking Sultan, you were not going to get your pucker sucked like that. "That's bullshit and you knew it. What's going on?" I pushed her. "Well, as far as he knows, I am an English diplomat's wife that's gotten his son out of jail in the bad part of Cuba." And that I believed, I think. Where was the good part of Cuba? But it didn't really matter. "Okay, I buy that one. Let's order lunch," I offered, just remembering that list of hers. "Yeah, grab a phone and order whatever you want. I'll draw a bath," she said, walking into the biggest bathroom I had ever seen. It was the size of my living room at home, but better lit, and the fixtures cost more than my whole house. I followed her in there. "You know I'm married, right? I mean, I'm not going to have sex with you, I said flatly. She made a fake frown and then smiled. I know, but as far as your marriage goes, it's a lie. What are you talking about? I asked out of reflex. She's one of them. So's your stepson. This was insane. She was insane. And everything that was happening was also insane. Oh yeah, my 8-year-old stepson is a double agent. Oh, honey, he's not a child. He's a midget. And he's 34. In fact, he's from Hobart, Tasmania. Well, that made all the difference. It all made sense now. As everyone knows, Tasmania is just filthy with preteen-looking 30-something-year-old midgets that work undercover for evil empires. She almost had me for a minute. She was such a combination of capable and beautiful that I could forget the fact that she was a murderer and I was a hostage. Not in the classical sense, to be sure. I had a few opportunities to run. I could do so right now. But where would I go? How would I explain where I am, how I got here, and why I was not just without a passport, but any identification of any kind? No, I was not Patty Hearst, but I was a hostage of circumstance. And until I could find a way to get to a friendly country, which right now might not be anywhere, I was kind of stuck with her. She was the only person that could explain this. And, as the past 10 minutes had shown me, she was not lying when she said, "We have friends here." I had a friend. They would cancel on me for a hangnail, but this guy looked like he might have killed a baby if she'd asked him to. However, I was not going to talk to her about my wife anymore. Let's change the subject. Who do we need to meet here? Well, she said, turning on the tub knobs and dropping her dress off of her onto the floor, all I need is to wait here. Facetious will make the contact and bring him here. She could see I was in shock. Her body was simply perfect. Like Photoshop perfect. She stepped into the bathtub, which was huge, as promised, and held out her hand slightly. "Are you sure you won't join me?" She purred at me with those smoldering lips and eyes and every fucking thing else. "Yep," I said in a shaky tone, turned on my heels, and stumbled out of the giant's bathroom into the giant's suite. I made my way to the phone, and it was picked up in a second. When I asked for a menu, the woman told me that they had none. They would just get me whatever I wanted. When I asked if they could get me about 198 pages of sense about these past 2 days, she seemed to pause for a moment, and then in perfect English said, "I can get a ghostwriter up to your suite by 6 p.m., which I took as Turkish for "fuck you, wise ass." And so I asked for a few steaks, whatever came with them, and a bottle of champagne. And before Tara was out of the bath, the buffet had arrived on rolling carts with multiple levels of sterling silver platters and accoutrement. Perfectly displayed sliced steak, and an epicurical work of art of side dishes, sweet dessert wines, fruit dipped in various selections of chocolate, and the champagne was Dom Perignon 1990. And why not have a $2,300 bottle of champagne with a light afternoon snack? Tara slithered out of the bathroom in a couple of towels and joined me on the huge balcony overlooking the Bosphorus Straits that ran from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. The water was deep blue and looked cool and still in the closing light. The sun was setting, stretching long yellow lines across the strait. The air was sweet and cool, and as unbelievable as it all was, I could not help but smile. Sure, I was an accessory to a convenience store murder. Yes, I had been drugged and kidnapped by an international criminal who was clearly delusional, and yep, I had been in a plane crash and was now in the most expensive hotel suite I had ever seen, pretending to be someone else while events and nefarious activities were being put in motion by dodgy underworld types, but this sure beat the shit out of writer's block. Tara could see I was deep in thought. "Hey, penny for your thoughts," she offered. What could I say? "Just who the hell are you?" She smiled and popped a slice of ripe guava covered in pure white chocolate into her mouth. "I'm your dream girl, baby." And at least on that, we could agree. Chapter 4. The cork bottle made a sound I was not expecting. It was much more like a gunshot than a champagne cork. However, I will be the first to admit that I'd never uncorked a $2,300 bottle of wine before. For all I knew, it was normal. A second afterward, Tara was over the table, towel dropping off of her perfect body and landing on me. sending my chair backward onto the balcony's deep red and blue tiled mosaic floor. Her face pressing down on mine, her lips pressing against my cheek. I could smell her sweet skin, fruit and wine on her breath, and the scent of $500 bath gel. Before I could ask just what the hell she was doing, I heard another champagne cork, and that's when I realized it wasn't a cork at all, but the second of some high-power projectile coming from the general direction of the strait. "Don't move," Tara said as she rolled off me and crawled inside. A second later she came out, buck naked and guns ablazing, unloading a shit ton of rounds out over the balcony railing at the fast boat about 100 yards off the seawall of the hotel. She was screaming something in what seemed to be Russian, but it could have been Klingon for all I knew, spewing what I was sure was vulgarities from those sweet lips that had just been on my face. A few more rounds from the boat missed her, breaking the glass doors and ripping into the 100-year-old granite walls of this historic landmark hotel. Then, from behind her, the doors flung open, and the hotel staff rushed out to us, throwing themselves on us, using their bodies as human shields. Fascist appeared and pushed Tara into the cove from one side of the balcony. He had an RPG in his hand, and in a hot second, he had extended it and screamed fire in the hole in broken English as he unleashed a single shot at the boat, catching it as it tried to escape. The boat exploded upward, and a few seconds later it was raining boat shards and the burnt parts of a few assholes. And then it was silent again, like it had never happened. The crew picked us up and hurried us into the suite where a team of doctors were ready to treat us. Tara was barking out orders in that other language. I was getting a hydrogen peroxide bath and gauze tape everywhere that even had a small bruise. After the triage team left us, Tara produced a red strapless dress from her bag and shimmied into it, and then turned her attentions to Fascist. "Just who did you tell we were here?" she said in a stern voice. He looked horrified. I was even scared, and I thought that a thank you for saving us was also in order, but she had the floor for now. "No one but our friend Akim. He would never betray you. I owe you a life debt," he said almost in tears. He seemed sincere. I believed him. Tara wasn't there yet, but she was still a little hot from the gunfight. "Well, someone has sold us out. What about those minions of yours? Would one of them talk out of turn?" He began to violently shake his head no. "No, no. They are my nephews and family. They would take a bullet for me." And as I had just seen, they would have taken a bullet for me too. Tara was being too hard on him, and I felt bad for him. "Look," I started, "I'm a stranger here, but we did crash land here, and that must have raised some eyebrows in some circles, right? I mean, there's more than one explanation, right?" I ended, trying to reason with her. I did not want this poor fucker's head goo all over me when she popped a few rounds into his melon. I was pissed off, but for different reasons altogether. She had gotten me again. I was sitting there just a few minutes ago like I was the great fucking Gatsby, getting ready to drink a $400 ship of champagne and all, "Pass me another Kiwi, old sport," and then the shit hit the fan. It was just like the suit. She did things that put me off the facts, the truth, and even if I was wanting to have a good time, even if I thought there might be a chance that I could justify this insane adventure, I knew now that something would always come up and bite me in the dick. There was an odd quiet in the room while the three of us were all processing everything that had been said. Then one of the minions came running through the door. "Fascist! Fascist!" He was out of breath. "The police are here! The state agents! They are coming up the lift right now!" he said, nearly collapsing on the sofa. Now we had no time to hug this shit out. We had to hot step it. Fascist turned to Tara and reached in his pocket. "Here, my queen! Take my keys! The boat is at the tunnel at the far end of the hotel! Take the service elevator! You must live!" It was a powerful statement, and an efficient one, because we had to fucking go. The near-dead minion offered to show us the aforementioned staff lift, and in a few minutes we were in a tunnel that ended at the water north of the main building. And there was a boat. A boat that looked like it was a prop from a Bond film. All polished wood and muscle, it was a fully restored vintage Riva Aquarama, and it looked like sex on the water. I had seen scale models of these boats that were $12,000. Tara started it, and it sounded like the space shuttle was taking off at the Cape. I got in the seat, and she hit the gas, snapping my head back so hard I was sure it was broken. Bare minimum, I was going to need a visit to a chiropractor. Tara had us going north, not because we had chosen that, but because that was the way the boat was pointed. We were out of the straits in 30 minutes. She powered back the boat. "We have a choice to make here," she said to me, like I had anything to offer here. I didn't know where we were or where we were going. What's the options? I asked, trying to be involved. 1, we could go across the Black Sea to the Ukraine, or we could go to that safe house we had around the corner from the Church of St. Cyril's in Bulgaria, she offered, like she was some strange danger travel clerk setting up an Eastern European vacation for a Spectre agent. Something about the place sounded familiar to me. St. Cyril's? Why does that sound so familiar? I asked her. Because we killed that pig there in '09. And then we used that flat above the sushi place. You know, on Bugas Center. She ended like it meant something to me. Oh yeah, I said, right, Bulgaria has the best sushi. You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you? She asked over the wind whipping at us. That memory block they used is becoming a pain in my ass here. Okay, we're off to Bugaras, she ended, and turned the boat slightly to the left, heading into the darkness of the Black Sea. And even though we were about 50 miles offshore, I could see the dots of light that dusted the shoreline. It was beautiful there. The boat was clipping along at a brisk pace. Tara had said we'd be there in about 3 hours. I was going to ask about how we'd be getting into this new country, but in truth, I didn't care anymore. I was sure we would just sneak in like turkey. I just hoped that we would not be leaving this fucking boat like we did that plane. After all, this was a work of art. And that was when it hit me. St. Cyril reference. It was from a Bond movie, For Your Eyes Only. They were supposed to meet up for the last big fight at some monastery called St. Cyril's. I remember it because Q said that there was 432 St. Cyril's in this part of the world. Now I was heading for one of them, and if I believed her, I had killed someone called the Pig there 11 years ago. Also, I found it interesting that she was just now starting to refer to a so-called memory block. Like this was some new plot device written in at the beginning of the second act to fix some other plot problem. It was like something I would do. In fact, I had done something very similar in a book, Dawn of the Last Night, which at the time I thought was a clever title, but now that I think of it, it sounds totally fucking stupid. Anyway, in that hunk of crap, I had to finish up leaning on a brain tumor that caused a memory issue so that Tara could not remember that she had been married to a hitman that turned out to be her long-lost stepbrother. That way, she could kill him and not have any guilt about it. It was 9 ways sick, and I felt dirty just talking about it, but it was a fucking living. Now, it seemed that Tara was pulling a me here by acting like my memory was intentionally blocked, and I was not going to let her get away with it. What memory block? Why didn't you say something about this before? She shot me a look. Hey, here, take a look at this video you shot and sent me back in 2017. I kept it just in case you had any problems believing me. She handed me the phone. I pressed play on the video. That did, indeed, have someone that looked a lot like me frozen on it. Hey, buddy. The me on the small screen started. I'm guessing that if you're watching this, that you're somewhere in Eastern Europe and Tara has had enough of your bullshit bad memory. I almost dropped the phone in the fucking water. What the fuck was happening here? It went on. So I'm going to make this as simple as possible. June 2016. I'd gotten really close to uncovering the head of the OMD, and for my work, I'd been tracked and nearly killed many times. Tara saved me. When we went to the Hive for protection, we discovered that they had been infiltrated by the OMD agents too. There was no one we could trust. And since the whole agency is off books, we had little we could do. The only thing we had going for us is that we could, Tara and I, well, you, could disappear. Tara arranged for us to die in a fiery car crash, and then she took you to the pit, which is what we call our tech headquarters, and secretly blocked your memory. Then she took up a new identity and kept around-the-clock watch on you. She set you up as a writer, and I'm sure you started pumping out piles of shit that no one would buy. She planned on supplementing your income by buying the crap off of Amazon and just burning it. I'm guessing that all worked out. I couldn't believe I was hearing this, and from my own fucking face on the screen. He went on. Anyhow, you're going to need to be unblocked to get back to being me. Tara will take you to the pit and get you our memory back. So, sorry you had to find out this way, but really, isn't this much better than sitting in Shitsville, Florida in your boxer shorts? See you soon. The video ended. I was speechless for about an hour. Just riding there in a stolen speedboat off the coast of Bulgaria on the Black Sea, with a hot and possible fake international spy trying to understand just how I got a message for myself detailing another life I had no idea about. When it hit me, This was the plot device from Total Recall, which did not help me rule out the long, twisted, potentially terminal psychotic break. Yet, this was real. It had to be. No one has this good of an imagination, and I could not only feel the water splashing on my face, I could taste it. What the hell kind of dream would that be? It would be no dream. It would be the best fucking VR ever.